But it is a very expensive treatment. Dr. Hellings, how are we going to make the choices between treating patients, effectivity and cost?
That's a very, very challenging question that is actually subject of a debate right now, because it's very multifactorial when you consider the criteria for choosing to recommend surgery to a patient or revision surgery versus the biological treatment. There are multiple considerations you have to take into account, not only linked to efficacy, but also cost, safety, and also comparison of efficacy and the duration of efficacy. So this is very multifactorial, and actually at this moment we lack these data, and we are investing these data with the group of experts in Europe to find out how we can at the end move forward in a better way for our patients. You've heard how much the patients suffer from asthma and CRS with nasal polyps, and that often in this patient population sinus surgery is not the ultimate solution. So we need to be able to offer these patients a better solution, not only for their quality of life, but also recuperation of smell capacity and other issues, and being able to breathe well and work properly and breathe through the nose properly. So, but that's also the reason why we have invited somebody from the health authorities here, in order to allow us to understand better what are the criteria in the future to allow our patients to get access to biological treatment.
Because reimbursement will be essential, will be needed in order to have this treatment effectively to a bigger target group.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big questions is, you said sinus surgery, but what is that? It's a very unstandardized bag. It can be just a little bit of polyps taken out, or it can be, we call it reboot surgery, where we remove all the surgery, so all the mucosa. So how, this is very difficult, I think, also for authorities to claim, and my feeling is a little bit that there's maybe too much money spent on surgeries which are sort of unstandardized and not leading to obviously what we need to see. On the other hand, if you have a patient that would really have all the the biomarkers to be most probably a responder to such a treatment, would you then say, well, you have to undergo another surgery? I don't think that is ethical. You cannot force patients into surgeries. You can propose it, but you cannot, I guess, get the patient into doing a surgery somewhere. So that's a little bit the drawback, especially if these patients have undergone surgeries already and have made not so positive experiences with it in terms of result.
Dr. Rombaux?
Perhaps that one question that I'm asking to myself is always, would the biomarkers give us the answer, oh, that's red light, do not operate again, or, oh, green light, that's a good candidate for biological medicine. I don't know yet what would be the help with the biomarker that we will use in the future in the clinic.
Well, to our knowledge at the moment, you can define a type 2 immune reaction. Either the patient has late onset asthma. That was a very nice remark. I like that very much, because people just say asthma, but it's late onset asthma. So if you have a nasal polyp patient and a late onset asthma, you're 95% type 2, no doubt. You don't need any markers, but you will see that at least in the polyps there's an increase in eosinophils, an increase in IgE. So you are really quite sure that this is the type of patient that should respond to any of these treatments.
Mrs. Lucet, from your point of view at the health authorities, what is needed in order to really have a reimbursement of this kind of novel treatment?
First of all, we need the studies, phase 3 studies, to be finished, and then the company has to get market authorization from the EMA, the European Medicine Agency. When they have that, they can come to us and ask for reimbursement of the drug. I like what you said. When we do an evaluation, it's not we do more than the EMA. They do benefits risk evaluation, most of the time versus placebo or standard of care, but we have to compare the treatment, the efficacy and the cost against what is existing. Okay, then we have different comparators than the EMA. When we have good evidence, the problem most of the time is the cost of the product. Then for real-life data, I can tell you that Belgium spent 200 million euro on respiratory drugs. I know only the drugs by heart. And we spent in 2017 30 million for asthma in monoclonal antibodies and 5 million for asthma in dermatology. That's a lot. And when we say, okay, we should reimburse this drug, but it's expensive. There we have several solutions. For monoclonal antibodies, sometimes the studies are done on a very large population with low level of eosinophil, only one exacerbation asthma per year. And then the company makes some more analysis, and they define that in one subgroup it is more effective. And then we can sometimes reimburse for indications that are more restricted than what is on the summary of characteristic products. Then also in the more restricted population, the efficiency is better, and then you have a better cost effectiveness, a better the other solutions that we have is that our minister signed a convention with the industry to facilitate access to innovation. And then sometimes, even when it's not reimbursed, the patients during the negotiation and so on can have an unmet, they enter in an unmet medical need program, and then they have access to the drug before it's reimbursed in Belgium. And the other solution that we have is that there are managed entry agreements. That means that the company keeps the facial price, but then there are negotiations about the cost, but it's absolutely confidential negotiation. But then in those contracts, it's temporary reimbursement. For example, the product is reimbursed during 3 years, and after that, we hope there are new data. And those conventions, managed entry agreement, are not only used to negotiate the price, but also there need to be some uncertainties about efficiency or safety.
Dr. Bachert, a brief reaction?
Just a brief reaction on the markers. We would be very happy if we would see, the different markers increased in the blood, but nasal polyps are quite small compared to the lung, and you cannot expect necessarily that the eosinophils are increased in the blood and the IgE is increased in serum. So the same markers would not be possibly applied, or you measure locally, and I think that's a bit more laborious and needs to be standardized. So it will be not so easy to find. But on the other hand,
that's a problem for us.
Yeah. Well,
because
don't punish the patient for that.
If we have the same biologics used for very severe asthma and for nasal polyps, when the patient has asthma, okay, the price is justified. But then it's now in real life data about 12,000 euro per year per patient on biologics. Do we really need to pay the same price for patients with only polyps?
Sure.
I don't know. It depends on the data that we will receive.
Dr. Mullol?
The
Well, only
efficiency.
answer these kind of patients that we are treating, these are not only polyps. These usually have, a lot of them, comorbidity with asthma. And I agree with you, one of the main issues is the cost efficacy. And that is the reason that one of the things that we probably need, and maybe urgently need, is a pharmacoeconomic study on these drugs that actually demonstrate the improvement and the reduction of costs, not only in the nose, in the number of surgeries, but also in the bronchi, in the asthma, and the reduction of drugs that you need to do. I think this study, that in the current studies is not, we will see if in these 3 phases we can get some data that can be used as a pharmacoeconomic studies, I think will be very, very helpful to convince the payers that that will be useful in these patients, not only for their efficacy and the improvement of quality of life, but also to reduce the general cost of the disease.
Yeah, but for the innovative treatment, the firm has to come with pharmacoeconomic studies, but the problem is that it's done on phase 3 studies where the patients are better followed. When we have 52 weeks of follow-up, we are happy. Then it's done on short-term results. And then, we have figures, but we don't know what we will have, what it will cost, what will be the benefits that we will have in real life. And even with the figures that we have from the companies, which are sometimes very optimistic, the cost per quality and the cost for quality adjusted life here is very, very high, even with optimistic figures. Then, the problem is that, we would like to give access to everything to everyone, but we work in a closed budget. And then what you give on one side, you don't give on another side.
It's just very annoying for me and frustrating because I'm 56 years old, and 2 years ago I didn't know what asthma was. I never heard of it. I heard of it, but I never suffered from it. So after 2 operations, those problems began. So I would be a patient of Dr. Bachert, for instance, and maybe not get the treatment, but I am a kind of a patient after 2 years, after 2 operations. I do have asthma. So yes, I get in the profile of customer for the treatment now.
Yeah, but then you will get it because in Belgium it's reimbursed.
I'm a perfect example of, it can get worse.
Yeah,
I hope it will start.
You will get better.
Yeah.
Perhaps that also there is a need to introduce some ethical point of discussion, because we know that the price for the reimbursement for oncology is much, much higher, 3-4 times the price of the monoclonal antibodies that we have for the nasal polyps. And we understand as a ENT that's normal to receive a monoclonal antibody for a cancer. But for us also it's less easy to understand why such a money are given for the dermatology problem. So we are perhaps between oncology, dermatology, and we need to really prove and to give arguments to you that giving money for polyps is also important.
Yeah, but there are also other ethical questions. There is no transparency about the price. And then, is it ethical to ask so high prices? It's another question. In some countries, there are levels of expense that you cannot But for example, in Belgium, we do not have a maximum cost per quality. Then even if the cost is unknown, even if the cost is huge, sometimes it's reimbursed. That's a problem. It's an ethical problem, but then no one took the responsibility to decide the drugs that are very, very expensive, we will not reimburse. And it's difficult when it is an orphan drugs and you have 4 children. You will say, oh, the cost per quality is very high, and then I do not reimburse. Sometimes some ministers did that, and then the company went to the press, and then journalists came, and then the minister refused to reimburse the drug that could that could improve the quality of life of this tiny guy, and but it's absolutely not easy, and the decisions are not easy.
Dr. Hellings?
Well, I would like to come back to that point because the decision-making process is very multifactorial, I understand. How important is the voice of the patients and also the group of patients affected by the disease? Because I can imagine if you have a huge group of patients that might need biologicals, that might change at the end the decision to reimburse yes or no, versus the small group of 4 patients or 4 children that need highly expensive or highly costly treatment. So how important is the voice of the patients and the proactivity of patients at RISIF level to make a change in the decision?
First of all, the RISIF INAMI does not decide. The Commission of Reimbursement of Drugs I work for just give advice to the minister, and the minister can decide what she wants. She can deviate from our advice without justifying it. It's just her duty to decide. That's important because some of our advices are not followed.
What we experience,
the voice of the patient is not officially heard in our commission. There are the companies who come with the stories of the patient, and they estimate with academic experts the number of patients that could benefit from the treatment. And then there are the mutualities who also come with examples, because there are some solidarity funds. There are some places in the in the sickness fund, and in the INAMI, where patients can come and say, okay, I receive this treatment, it's very expensive, or I should receive this treatment, it's not reimbursed, and sometimes for exception it's reimbursed. Otherwise, patients go to the minister. Association of patients go to the minister.
Dr. Hopkins, in the UK, are you talking to the health authorities as well about reimbursement of biologicals?
So we have NICE, which is our regulatory body, and we have a ceiling price, which is the maximum amount that can be spent on any new drug. So we're having negotiations about biologics at the moment, and we have a maximum amount of money. The drug companies come with the price that they would like to be paid, and we come with the number of patients and the indications that we would like to treat. And there is always a mismatch, and then there is negotiation both in terms of reducing price and changing our criteria until we can get it under that ceiling. So that does help frame the discussion and better define our indications. So I think that works well within the budget that we have. I think the big problem that we have that you've touched on is that we're not very good at bringing the patient voice to that discussion. And most people that haven't suffered with polyps or haven't treated those patients just don't understand what it is. You said, what do we do about the patients that only have nasal polyps? And to those patients, only having nasal polyps means they don't sleep, they don't smell, they don't enjoy their family dinners, they're depressed, they have many days off work, they function at a below par level for most of the year, and we have to somehow put a cost to that is weighed into the equation, as well as some of the other metrics that we use at the moment.
maybe I can further add. It's maybe more easy for me as pulmonologist to add further on that, because where we were running nose chest clinics, when we did see patients with either ear polyps only or both polyps and asthma, in terms of quality of life, we did not see specific difference, and that's what studies tell. Usually asthma is seen as a more severe disease. It might be, but nasal polyps per se is a very severe disease, and I would really advocate for that as well, even as a pulmonologist.
Yeah, but we have to decide on data.
Yeah, sure.
Just we need data to try to evaluate the impact of the disease and the impact on
Yeah,
the
so
drug.
we have to get better at collecting and quantifying that impact than we are at the moment.
Dr. Mullol, are you having the same kind of discussion with the Spanish health authorities?
Yes, also we have the same kind of discussion. I mean, usually the health authorities have very clear that asthma is a stronger disease. They understand very well because they have been dealing with asthma association of patients. They have a long history of fighting for drugs for asthma and so on. And they are less used to discuss for the potent drugs for nasal polyposis, and they don't understand very much what is this, and probably we need to educate not only the population, our patients, but also the health authorities, that this is a very, very severe disease with impact not only in the nose, but also in the bronchi. I mean, when the severity, the severe asthma patients, if regular asthma patients have 20 or 25% of patients with nasal polyps, severe nasal patients have 70%. I mean, you cannot deal with it with a separate disease. Treat nasal polyp as a single disease and asthma is a single disease. No, this is a common disease that the patient suffers. And suffers in the nose and suffers in the bronchi. And both have impact in quality of life, in cost, in bad smell, in depression, as you said before. And this impact, it's coming from both sides. This is a common disease. As we understand allergic rhinitis and allergic asthma as a common disease, late onset asthma and chronic rhinitis nasal polyps is the same disease, affecting two organs. And we have a drug that is fighting in both sides, in the nose and in the bronchi. What? Yeah, but we cannot talk about, well, we understand the treatment of asthma, but nasal polyps is another disease, is another thing, is less important. That usually is the what when we talk. No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the people with the health authorities and so on. They don't understand that they should spend money in these kind of diseases that is solved with small surgery and so on, is what they usually tell you.